Hey y'all, welcome to the Southern Appalachian Herbal Podcast. I'm Judson Carroll and I'm an herbalist. I'm also a wild crafter, a gardener, and herb grower. I'm coming to you from high atop the beautiful Blue Ridge Mountains of North Carolina, just a stone's throw from the Tennessee line, overlooking the Pisgah National Forest, absolutely surrounded by the bounty of God's green earth. I spent most of my life wandering these mountains and learning about plants from the old timers and all sorts of characters. On this show, we'll talk about herbs and how to use them, how to find them, how to grow them, how to make preparations. We'll talk about a lot of things. We can also talk about permaculture, homesteading, foraging, and living off the land. Most anything, really. You can email me at southernappalachianherbs@gmail.com if you have a question or a comment. You can also contact me through the Grow Network, where I'm a regular contributor and a moderator for the forums. And my blog is, of course, southernappalachianherbs@blogspot.com. All right, y'all. I'm going to sit my guitar down and let's talk about herbs. Hey, y'all. Welcome to this week's show. My podcast is usually officially released, we'll say, on Mondays. I generally will upload it, make sure it's processed, good to go on Sunday afternoon, Sunday evening, as I'm relaxing and watching a baseball game after church. It's just a kind of enjoyable thing for me to do in the afternoons. I'm, as laid back as I am, and I am probably the most laid back guy you will ever encounter. Slow moving, slow talking, genuine hillbilly. I never liked holidays as a kid. I never liked weekends. I mean, it was great to get out of school. I absolutely hated school. But Sundays and holidays were like the bane of my existence. I mean, honestly, I am not one to just sit around. I don't mind relaxing, but if I am relaxing, I'm either watching something interesting, which there's very little of these days, playing an instrument. I play well, let's see, I play guitar, mandolin, three types of banjo, ukulele, because a couple types of ukuleles, bass. I used to play bass. I haven't played in a long while. I've got a gorgeous 122-year-old upright grand piano that's made out of, I mean, just solid thousands of pounds of tiger oak and ebony and ivy and just, all brass on the inside. I mean, really a historical piece I kind of fix up every now and then and kind of tinker with every now and then. I play violin. I'm not one to just sit around. Honestly, I'd rather be cooking if I'm than most anything else at the house. I'd rather be fishing or hiking or hunting or trapping or gardening outside. I'm just not one to sit. Sure, give me a nice sunset at the beach or on a mountaintop. There's actually an incredible cliff behind my house. If you hike about 2 hours straight up, it's sitting at about 5,000 feet elevation. Sometimes I'll just go up there and watch the sun go down, which is foolish because it means hiking back in the dark with packs of coyotes running around you know, but I like to do it. I like to be doing something. So for me, this is not work. It's not work at all. It's quite a bit of fun. And when you hear this episode, it will be Memorial Day. Now, I failed to recognize Memorial Day last year, but it's important. It's really important. Before I get into it, let me tell you, this is going to be a show about herbs. This is going to be a show about herbal medicine. By the time you listen to this podcast, you will have absolutely no doubt why I believe herbal medicine is important, why I think it's important for you to learn about herbs, and you can have a real good argument, I think, to convince doubting friends. Let's put it that way. We all have doubters in our life, and you will have an argument of why it is of paramount importance to take charge and responsibility for your own health and to be as self-sufficient and self-reliant, as resilient as possible in your own life. But I don't want to let this holiday pass without remembering what it really is all about. This isn't Veterans Day, and it's not the 4th of July. Those are, great holidays. I mean, some of my ancestors were founders, and most of the men in my family served. Veterans Day is a wonderful day. The 4th of July is a wonderful day. Memorial Day is the day we recognize those who gave their lives for our freedom. And I would say also those who gave up of their lives for freedom, for our freedom, for the freedom for you and me to have a peaceful Sunday, to have a peaceful Monday, I guess, which is going to be Memorial Day, to go to the beach, to go to the mountains, to enjoy being with your family. They died for that, or part of them died for that. I want to talk about a man I mentioned in one of my first podcasts. Way back, Thanksgiving was the one right before Thanksgiving. Almost, what, 80 episodes ago. I mean, it's amazing for me to think how many of these shows I've done and how long I've been doing it. And it's the listeners that keep me wanting to do this and make it worthwhile. It's a team effort. I firmly believe it. We're in this together. Well, speaking of being in something together, let me tell you about Mr. Vernon Haslett. Now, I was down visiting family. I was near Fayetteville, North Carolina. As I always say, if you have any kind of military background, you know where Fayetteville is, and you probably never want to go back. I mean, it's an awful place. Sorry if you live in Fayetteville and you think it's wonderful. No, it's as close to hell on earth as I ever want to be. It's hot in the summer, it's cold in the winter, and the crime rate's off the roof. I mean, it's off the charts. You have a better chance of being killed in Fayetteville than you do, in an actual war zone. Okay, Fayetteville's always been that way. They used to call it Vietnam. When I was a kid, Hay Street was nothing but hookers and drug dealers. I mean, it's a rough place. They've slapped a little makeup on the pig. It looks a little better these days. But just look at the crime stats. There are several cities in North Carolina that have a higher murder rate than Chicago. I'm not kidding. Okay, Charlotte is incredibly dangerous. Fayetteville is incredibly dangerous. Um, Whiteville, North Carolina. I think Kinston may have the highest murder rate in the country last time I looked. It's so bad. And now, and I may be mistaken if it's not Kinston. It's somewhere down east in the Greenville area. I think it is Kinston, though. And, you can look it up. It's so bad they literally stopped sending in crime statistics to the FBI. It's so bad they don't want people to know how bad it is. Winston-Salem has a huge murder rate. Durham is hell on earth. Okay, Durham is hell on earth. Don't go to Durham. I think Thomasville's looking pretty bad these days. Lumberton has historically had one of the highest murder rates in the entire country. That is the town where a few years ago, I don't know, 12, 15 members of their actual police force were convicted for trafficking drugs and kidnapping and murder for Mexican drug cartels. And now they got a serial killer. You don't hear much about it because they don't want you to hear much about it, trust me. But women's bodies have been turning up in trash cans in the streets of Lumberton, North Carolina. And no one's going to do a damn thing about it, okay? It's endemic, it's part of the culture. They just turn a blind eye to everything bad. Everybody on welfare. The only industry is the hospital and working for the government. Like I said, put everybody on welfare and pretend like everything's okay, which is a really bad way to start talking about this because the man I'm going to tell you about was a hero. I was near Fayetteville and I was walking my dog, and an old man sitting on his porch called me over. And he was a very old man. He was in his 90s. He offered me a cigar. He offered me a drink of bourbon. He said, sit down and talk with me for a while. So, of course, I sat down and spent most of the day with him. His name was Mr. Vernon Haslett. He would joke and say that when he turned 90, he decided to smoke and drink as much as he wanted. He was brilliant. He was good humored. He was everything a man ought to be. And the reason he called me over, as he explained, was because of my haircut. You see, I keep my hair long on top, but cut short. Most times, now you may have seen a video or two where it was a little shaggy, and you know, I was going to slick it back sometimes. It was during COVID, and none of us got very regular haircuts. I've actually learned during COVID to cut my own hair, so I keep it a little better trim these days. But I basically wear my hair like the men used to in the 30s and 40s. I like that style. I like everything about that time period, actually. I love the clothes. If I could find some of what they call the old man pants, I would buy all I could get if they fit me. I'm a tall guy. I'm 6'4". That high waist is built for a guy like me. Modern clothes don't fit me right. They don't look good on me. Whereas the clothes, actually made by tailors, actual craftsmen who sewed fabric, they don't exist anymore, by the way. I called the finest men's shops in 2 or 3 states. They said we get everything pre-cut from China. Yeah, they just make it fit you. They take your measurements and they shorten the pants or whatever. They make it fit you, but it's not made for you. Back in the 1920s, 30s, 40s, they made clothes that made every man look like Superman. The music was fantastic. I mean, if you want to hear good music, honest, good music recorded by really talented people, I'm telling you, the Dorsey brothers, Benny Goodman, Glenn Miller, the Andrews sisters, Fats Waller, one of my all-time favorite, my absolute musical hero, of course, Louis Armstrong, Bob Wills and the Texas Playboys, the best country band ever existed. Bob Wills and the Texas Playboys. That era, cars, if you get old cookbooks or restaurant menus from that, the food was far better than we're eating now. That was the height American culture. The movies. Look, you're not going to find a better movie than Casablanca. We all know that. Or how about The Big Sleep? Or Maltese Falcon. Yeah, I'm going down Humphrey Bogart territory here. Love Humphrey Bogart. Anyway, those young men, like Mr. Haslett, they're the reason we're here today. Mr. Haslett said to me, "Your hair reminds me of a guy I was served with." And I said, "Oh, yeah, I like to wear it old fashioned." I wasn't thinking, you know, I'm being lighthearted. I wasn't thinking what he was thinking. You know what he was thinking? He stormed the beaches of Normandy with his best friend. His best friend was cut in half by machine gun fire. He's feeling around in the water trying to find him. He grabs his hair and pulls him up to say goodbye. Now, I'm going to edit this show for errors. If you had been listening to it live, you would have heard probably 3 minutes of silence because I couldn't talk. Men like Mr. Has are the reason we celebrate Memorial Day. In that one battle, it kind of depends on how you add things up, either as many or more American young men died than in the entire Vietnam War. We have been walking around with heroes and not even noticing. And now they're gone. Mr. Haslett died a few years ago. Um, they're gone. And what do we have left? What do we have left? I can tell you, if you've lived, I'm assuming you did, everyone listening to the show has lived through May of 2022, and you have to admit it has been one hell of a month. We've got, well, most obviously, gas prices higher than in all history, and Joe Biden, I will not call him President Biden. Joe Biden basically admitted the other day it's on purpose. He wants people to drive electric cars. Electric cars fueled by electricity made from burning coal and oil and natural gas. Electric cars, the batteries, the minerals used in those batteries, mined in Asia and Africa by child slave labor. Okay, well, you think that's a good idea to drive electric cars? Fine. I can't afford one. Most Americans can't afford one. His economy and inflation have basically taken away everyone's savings. But he thinks, and apparently one of the two major political parties, and oh, what are we going to say, 35 to 40% of the population, thinks it's okay to hurt people, to, you know, make people's lives harder, to take food out of children's mouths, to force them into driving electric cars. You know what? If you think that way, you're not honoring Mr. Haslam's legacy. He was ready to give his life for you and your freedom to drive a car you like. You know, one of those beautiful rolling sculptures people used to drive in the 40s and 50s. Um, you're not a good American. I'm sorry if you believe that. I will stick with my 1989 Chevy pickup truck. I used to have a 92 Ford. My Actually, those are my two second trucks I've ever had. My first actually being my grandfather's International. If you ever drove an International, you know why I desperately wish I still had that vehicle. Unfortunately, the ownership got a little murky, and my uncle sold it without letting me know. I would uh, I would rather have that vehicle than anything manufactured in the last 30 or 40 years. But no, I'm not buying an electric car. Um, frankly, Joe Biden can go to hell. I don't care. And he is, unless he changes his ways. Sorry, I'm a Catholic. He has no right to call himself a Catholic while supporting abortion and gay marriage and all the things he believes in. He's committing the sins of scandal and heresy, and not to mention the fact that he supports murdering innocent children. So that's my opinion on Joe Biden. But what else has happened this week, this month? Oh gosh, this week has been horrible. Hey, personally, I've dislocated a shoulder and broken a foot, so it's been a it's been a tough month all around. But I mean, for everybody else, I mean, you're obviously the first thing you're thinking is the school shooting. Someone pointed out the other day the school shooters are all the same kid. They're all the same troubled, dark, nihilistic young man. This one turned out to be a cross-dressing Hispanic. For some reason, most of the news networks don't want to tell you that. I guess when Biden said the biggest threat was, white conservatives, they don't want to admit that maybe a transgendered Hispanic could be an issue. Yeah. So, what else? The war in Ukraine is going on into its third month. Inflation at a 40-year high, and they went out bragging that it ticked down at 0.1% in the last in the last report. Okay, groovy. It's we're still at a 40-year high, and but we're doing, maybe you can save a half a penny more than you did last month, right? The world is literally in a bad place. China is doing things right now that really are very troubling. They came out and said basically the Chinese economy is going into recession, flat growth at best. They've got cities of millions and millions of people under total what they call COVID lockdowns. It seems like it may be a different disease that they don't want to admit to yet. Maybe they made something else in a lab and it got out purposefully or not on purpose. I don't know. That certainly happened recently. And on the other hand, it looks like they could be kind of unifying their nation, preparing for war, invading Taiwan. If that happens, it's not going to be like Russia invading Ukraine. I mean, that meant a lot to me because my best friend was in Odessa and is now dead. If China invades Taiwan, one, we may have to go to Taiwan's aid, putting us at war against the largest military on the face of the earth with nuclear weapons. Even if we don't, Taiwan's where they make almost all the microchips and all that stuff. Okay. That means no cell phones, no computers, no new satellites, no new cars, no new medical equipment, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. It would be China invading Taiwan would be the biggest blow to the U.S. economy and capability that we've ever experienced. It would be, and no one can stop it. No one knows what's going to happen. We have a weak, idiotic, feckless president who could not intimidate a flea, and a woke military with transvestite generals, and who knows what's going on up there. They're more concerned about giving everybody vaccines than they are about protecting the country. And that's really getting a little closer to people are losing faith in America's institutions. Really good reason. And this is not a new phenomenon. I mean, yeah, okay, in the 1960s, a bunch of hippies did the back to land movement, and they said they had lost faith in America thanks to the Kennedy assassination and the Martin Luther King assassination and et cetera, the Vietnam War. It was a phase, it was a fad. They grew out of it. By the 1980s, they all wanted to be stockbrokers and drive Mercedes Benz, BMWs, right? I mean, even Jerry Rubin. I mean, look, I have an interesting bookshelf. I actually have a large collection of political books that represent the very opposite of the spectrum of my thinking. I actually really enjoyed reading Abby Hoffman's books. Okay, Abby Hoffman was a total reprobate, communist, atheist, the whole bit. He was a funny guy, and actually some of the stuff he wrote was pretty salient. I mean, pretty insightful. Um, his his book, Steal This Book, actually had a lot of information in it that later led to, like, the Anarchist Cookbook, and that whole Ragnar Benson, and was it Loom Panics and Paladin Press. Okay, the Dale Gribble stuff, the kind of crazy out there Dale Gribble stuff. His book was very much in line with that. It's a funny book. It's a fun book, even if I don't agree with his motivations. Jerry Rubin was hardcore. Jerry Rubin was the other founder of the Yippies, right? His ideology was hardcore. He was far more communist and serious and radical and revolutionary than Abby Hoffman. By 1980, Jerry Rubin, who had written Woodstock Nation and several other, very radical tear down the empire books, did an interview where he explained how he had gone from yippie to yuppie. Okay, the 60s hippies, they were all, lay around in the mud and free love until they ran out of their parents' money, and then they wanted that BMW. Okay, they were not, uh, they were not who they claimed to be. I don't have much good to say about baby boomers in the first place, so I'd probably better move on. But, in the 1970s at least, there were movies like Rambo in the 80s. I mean, you know what I'm talking about when I say a lot of these guys coming back from Vietnam, they were not necessarily hippies and communists, but they had totally lost faith in the system. And they went out into the woods and they became independent. And a lot of that really led to the militia movement. A lot of that really fostered the prepper movement. People have been losing faith in institutions for a long time. It's called keeping an eye on the news and realizing you're not being told the truth. Okay. But when COVID came along, first of all, they put Tony Fauci in charge of things. I mean, you know what Tony Fauci did. I mean, if you don't, get, Robert Kennedy Jr.'s book, okay? The Real Dr. Anthony Fauci. This is the man who caused the AIDS epidemic. When AIDS first came to America, it was isolated among a very small group of gay men who were associated with each other due to a bathhouse. Now, they didn't all stay right there in San Francisco at the bathhouse. I mean, they had contacts that were kind of spread across the country, but it was just a few hundred people. Now, you would think Dr. Fauci, the architect of the lockdowns, would have said, call them all in, ask them to come in, arrest them if you have to, because it's a threat to public health, right? Isolate these people, quarantine them, at least until we know what's going on, right? That would have stopped AIDS from moving throughout the entire population. No, instead, politically, it was thought that to associate the AIDS virus, HIV, with gay men would stigmatize homosexuals in our society. Now, you could make a very good argument of why you would not want to do that. I mean, obviously, I don't want anybody to be discriminated against or hurt or anything like that. But from a public health perspective, the right thing to do was to quarantine and stop the spread, right? I mean, that is common sense. Well, instead, what he did was prohibit any restriction on people from that group giving blood, and contaminated blood then spread throughout the American population and made sure that AIDS became an epidemic that spread far outside of the gay male community. I mean, after that, heterosexual men and women and children of all walks of life, regardless their ideology or sexuality or whatever, had a threat from AIDS. So they put Tony Fauci in charge of COVID. And yes, he's absolutely blown it once again. He he thinks he walks on water, but what do we have? We have government mandating vaccines, we had travel restrictions, we destroyed our economy. We've given people vaccines that, one, don't work. I mean, how many members of the Biden administration just in the past month, having been fully vaccinated and boosted 3 or 4 times, came down with COVID, contracted COVID? The whole point of taking a vaccine is so you don't get the virus. These vaccines do not work. If they worked, we wouldn't still have outbreaks of COVID among the vaccinated population. The best you can say is they don't work very well. Maybe they reduce the risk of death in certain populations, but you know what? COVID had almost what is it, 94%, 96% survivability rate across all ages. Only among sick and elderly people was it a problem. And for children, COVID had a 99.6 or something survivability rate. It still does. I had COVID, I lived. I know many people who had COVID and lived. Now, if you're following what Dr. Naomi Wolf is doing, she's looking at all the Pfizer documents that a judge forced them to release, and she's finding miscarriages, horrible things happening to children. All the pregnant women that were basically in this study, they took them out of the study so they didn't have to show that the vaccine was killing their babies. They're finding a lot of really bad side effects of these vaccines, and the news won't tell you. So, what's happening? People are losing faith in the institutions of government and healthcare. And frankly, it's about damn time. The medical profession is the leading cause of death in America. More people die from malpractice, medical abuse, contraindicated prescriptions, and overprescription than die of cancer, heart disease, car accidents, etc. Unfortunately, that has not, I mean, more than half the population still trusts everything their doctor says. And by force of law, in many instances, if you disobey your doctor's orders, the police can force you, take your children away, make you do something. But people are losing faith in government and healthcare. Why wouldn't you lose faith in a government that is purposefully driving up gas prices to force you to drive a vehicle that's actually going to be worse for the environment in the long run, under the guise of being good for the environment? Look, I'm from North Carolina. Election fraud and theft is a tradition here. My own family members have actually participated in it. We've probably never had a legitimate election in North Carolina. I mean, when I was a kid, I remember ballot boxes going driving around in the back of people's cars. I mean, do you honestly believe that a majority of North Carolinians went and voted for Donald Trump for president and Roy Cooper, Democrat, liberal, feckless moron for governor? If you do, you probably believe that in Marjorie Taylor Greene's district, a totally outspoken pro-Trump Republican, Brad Raffensperger, the anti-Trump Secretary of State, got more votes than she did. Yeah, you believe that? Well, let me just tell you. I don't have a whole lot of trust in our election system, and apparently 70 some percent of Republicans don't have much trust in elections, and over half the population of the United States has lost trust in that institution as well. During the COVID lockdowns, parents got to see what their kids are being taught. They got to see that instead of being taught math and reading and history, they were being taught racial bigotry. Innocent children were being taught to hate each other. And a lot of teachers seem to want to convince those children to question their gender. Look, I'm going to make a controversial statement, but there are two genders. There are only two genders. Any child can tell you boys have a penis and girls have a vagina. Your gender is not only determined by your reproductive parts, but by your chromosomes, X and Y. You are either born male or female. Now, this is America. You can do with that whatever you wish. I'll quote the Meatwad, which was a character on a ridiculously funny cartoon called Aqua Teen Hunger Squad or something like that. He said, "This is America. You can do any damn stupid thing you want to do, unless you're a Sasquatch. The rules are a little bit different for the Sasquatch. I'm a Sasquatch, by the way, but I make my own rules. That's what I'm encouraging you to do, and we'll get to that in just a minute. But like the Meatwad said, do anything you want to do. If you choose in this country to call yourself by a different name or be attracted to a different gender than you naturally would be, that's fine. Well, it's not fine to me. I think it's actually, pretty sick, but it's legal. If you are a man who thinks you're a woman, you're mentally ill. I'm sorry, you are. You can have it cut off. You're still going to be a boy dressed in girl's clothes. You were born male. You will die male. You will always be male. If you're female, it's the same thing. Now, you can call yourself Jenny and sleep with whomever you please, but you're still going to be a guy. Anything else is mental illness. It's actually called gender dysphoria. And if you get an old DSM, not old, really, I mean, just from like the 80s, the entire medical and psychological community would have said that was a mental illness. But now teachers are actually engendering, teachers are actually teaching, encouraging mental illness. And so we have a guy that likes to wear skirts go shoot up a school and kill a bunch of innocent children. Parents are now losing faith in the education system. In all honesty, I hope they will lose full faith in the education system and homeschool their kids. That's the only thing that's going to save the society because our education system was never designed to teach children to think for themselves or to be, intelligent, inventive, logical people. It was designed to create factory workers and to teach people to follow orders, which leads to the next thing. When that school shooter was in there slaughtering all those children, the police stood outside and did nothing. They did absolutely nothing, except prevent parents from going in to save their own children. I got friends who are cops. I got a lot of friends who are active duty and veterans. And I will tell you, people may say, if I was there, they would not have stopped me. I heard a guy on the news this morning saying, I'm a veteran. I would have picked up my gun and run into that school, and no one would have stopped me from saving my kid. Yeah, okay. I would like to say the same thing. I'm sure you feel the same way. Do you realize that only about 5% of the population will actually do that? Most people, thanks to their training in public education, do what they're told, follow orders. And military and police are more likely to follow orders rather than think for themselves and take action on their own because that's what they've been trained to do post school. So if you're thinking the police are going to protect you, hopefully they will. I live, if I called 911, it would take over a half hour for a cop to get to my house. I've always known I had to protect myself. Doesn't mean I dislike cops or anything. I mean, I'm usually on their side. But in this instance, the police were absolutely wrong and no one could stop them because the police had the guns. Again, people are losing faith in institutions. They've lost faith in the government. They've lost faith in the public education system. They've lost faith in the medical community and are losing faith, hopefully more every day. And now they're losing faith in the police. And thanks to our political leadership, I don't think a lot of people have a lot of faith in the military that much anymore. One of my mentors in life was actually G. Gordon Liddy, the G Man. I mean, seriously, um, I never would have thought that the FBI, I mean, the CIA is always up to bad stuff. I mean, everybody with an ounce of sense knows you don't trust the CIA, right? They're always doing stuff they don't even tell the government about. They don't even tell the congressman they're supposed to answer to about. But the FBI, everybody believed the FBI was, you know, one of the most hallowed institutions in the United States. And how many people think that now? Past, 10 years, probably less than that, we've lost faith in the FBI because they've been faithless. And now people are beginning to lose faith in the Supreme Court. Frankly, I never had any faith in the Supreme Court in the first place. But, the liberals did, the left did. They thought the Supreme Court was the final word. And now, because the Supreme Court is ruling in a way that they don't agree with, they want to flush the Supreme Court down the road. We're losing faith in our economy. We're seeing empty store shelves. Food, toilet paper is not getting here. We've lost faith a long time ago in the banks. I mean, we lost faith at least in 2008 in the banks. We saw bad lending processes lead to an absolute economic collapse. And we know that the only thing keeping us afloat is funny money. It's just inflated false currency. We're losing faith in every aspect of the American society. And why this is so important is because, our Constitution is a social contract very different than pretty much every other country on earth. It is predicated upon people voting for whom they think is the best man for the job or woman or the same, get into that. And that person, let's say, um, faithfully serving their office to do their best for the people. Our entire society is based on goodwill. It's based on putting faith in our fellow man. We hire the politicians, we hire the military and the police to do the job, and we trust them to do it. And there's a legal system to go after the bad ones if they do wrong. And now that legal system is oftentimes turns against us and letting the bad guys get away with murder. Honestly, do you think that Joe Biden's son, who is a drug addict, who has a laptop full of pictures of him smoking crack and having sex with hookers and apparently children, who has taken millions of dollars from foreign government, exploiting with major conflicts of interest in an illegal way his father's position, do you really think he's going to be prosecuted? If you did a tenth of what he did, do you think you'd be prosecuted? Therein, our blind justice system has failed us, and we're losing faith in the justice system. When did all this start? I can't tell you for sure. I can tell you my family lost faith in a lot of things around 1860. Uh, yeah, big time. Even before that in the Whiskey Rebellion. But things kept being patched back together because even if your loyalties were to the South as opposed to the North, or your loyalties were to a Protestant church as opposed to a Catholic church, or et cetera, we were all Americans and we were all in it together. And we believed in helping our fellow man. We believed in what Adam Smith would call the invisible hand, concerted self interest. I do what's right for myself. I do what's in my best interest. And by doing so, I create a common good for all my neighbors. That's what an economy is based on. I produce a product, you buy a product, most people are benefited by it. Uh, I want to live in a safe area. Therefore, I want, a police force that's going to keep rampaging hordes from running through town. Well, just in the last few years, I mean, we've seen, let's take, for instance, the January 6th protesters, many of whom had no idea they were doing anything wrong. The police literally opened the doors and welcomed them into the Capitol, and then they were arrested for trespassing. And they're sitting in jail for a year and a half now. Some have died. On the other hand, Black Lives Matters protesters and Antifa protesters who hit police officers with the head with bricks, burned down cities, and killed people got a slap on the wrist and were let out. We have no faith in the justice system anymore. What is there left? We've taken out government, healthcare, education, the legal system, the banking, the economy. It's all falling apart. It's all falling apart. And where it started, the first institution Americans lost faith in was the family. We have more than a 50% divorce rate. We have let me double check, as of last count, 40, I believe. Let me see, 40.5% illegitimacy rate. Think about that. Nearly half of kids, 40.5%, are born to an unwed mother. Of the remaining 60%, over half of them will live with divorced parents. Remember how I said that school shooter, they're all the same kid? They're all the same guy? I don't know of a school shooter yet that has had two parents in a household that has come from an intact family. I mean, one of them may have had a stepfather or something, but I mean an intact family. I don't know of a school shooter yet that hasn't been on psychiatric medication, from Ritalin to antipsychotics and antidepressants in between. Okay. I don't know of one of them yet that has been a churchgoer who was taken to church and raised morally. Yeah, a lot of them are into pretty dark music, and most of them play video games and spend way too much time on a computer. I don't think many of them have been camping and fishing very often, I can tell you that much. Most of them probably have been bullied. That's kind of the other side of the coin when you have an out of control society, no fathers in the hunt. One kid will go shoot up a school. Another kid will just be an absolute jackass and beat up that kid until he comes to that breaking point. And unfortunately, if you saw the most recent one again, his mother was being interviewed and she said, he's not to blame, he has his reasons. Yeah, that is unacceptable. It's frankly unacceptable. And of course, someone listening to this is going to say, wait a minute, you're picking on this kid, this Hispanic, trans, cross dressing, whatever. What about that kid just a week earlier that went and shot a bunch of black people at a grocery store? Yeah, also really bad, equally as bad, totally be condemned. And let's look at that kid's manifesto. He called himself a leftist authoritarian. While our federal government is saying the problem is right wing white Christians, we've just had two mass shootings and one a few weeks before that. The one a few weeks before that was a black leftist who hated white people and went and shot a bunch on a subway. Next, we have a white leftist who hated black people and went and shot a whole bunch of them at a grocery store. And then we have a Hispanic crossdresser or whatever he was who probably had, let's say, some resentments toward that school or schools in general. Uh, I would be, I guarantee you, none of these murderous, leftist, radicalized people, alienated people, went to church on Sundays. In America in the 1960s, we got rid of the laws surrounding divorce. It was called no fault divorce. That's what was legalized. No longer did you have to say someone cheated on me or I've been abused. It was just, I'm tired, I'm moving on. By the late 1960s into the 70s, we had laws that were incentivizing not having a father in the home. I'm sorry, but they were paying women to have children out of wedlock. And now we have animals in the streets of every race, of every background. I can tell you that where I'm sitting right now, there are areas I don't go that are totally white, Scots Irish. They are so heavily into methamphetamines and other drugs, and they are just as wild animals shooting each other as there would be in certain neighborhoods in Chicago where, black kids are doing the same thing, or certain areas where Hispanic kids are doing the same thing. It has nothing to do with race. It has to do with we destroyed the institution of marriage, and then we destroyed the churches. Church attendance is down year after year after year. People are not going to church. Kids are not growing up in church. Kids are lucky if they have one parent that cares about them. They're put in an institution called the public education system that is destroying them. They're taught there is no God. I mean, am I exaggerating? Well, look back at President Woodrow Wilson. President Woodrow Wilson is the first progressive leftist that we elected in this country. He was a Klansman. He did a whole movie promoting the Ku Klux Klan. He wanted to exterminate black and brown people and all Catholics. He's a Democrat, a liberal Democrat, just like Margaret Sanger, who was the founder of Planned Parenthood, who founded Planned Parenthood to exterminate black people. That's why there's a Planned Parenthood in every black neighborhood. That's who the left is. Woodrow Wilson's key governing philosophy, and you can look this up in any honest source, was that our founding fathers, the patriarchs of our churches, were all mistaken, all wrong, all delusional because Charles Darwin hadn't lived yet and they did not understand evolution. The man was an atheist. His system of government was an elite to oversee the evolution of culture. He totally threw out and disregarded the Constitution of the United States. He violated his oath of office. He was an evil man. He was actually a hero of Mussolini and Hitler. Okay? This is your Democratic Party, people. Next comes FDR, and he starts institutionalizing all this. He was even worse than Wilson in many ways. I mean, he was a pen pal with Mussolini, who thought he hung the moon. He puts in public education for the very purpose of countering religious education. He did not want kids going to Catholic schools. He didn't want kids going to the little, Baptist school down the street. He wanted kids going to a government school to be taught his ideology, which was godless and racist, actually, and anti-family. Karl Marx said he had to destroy the family, he had to destroy the churches. They've done it. They've been very successful. Now, I'm not condemning in any way single parents. I was raised by a single mother. My dad, I don't talk a lot of, personal stuff. Not so good a guy. I I have maybe seen him 5 times in the last 35 years. He just didn't care. I think he's on his fourth wife now. No, uh, definitely not my mother's fault. Let me just put it that way. Pretty pretty bad situation. There are times when you marry the wrong person and you have to take action, and it's not good. It should break your heart. It should be last option, not the first. But we've gotten to a point in America now where 54% of I think it's 54 or 59%. I'd have to look at the current stats. Marriages end in divorce. It wasn't long ago. I was sitting in a, it was actually a little Baptist church, and I met a fella. He was a sheriff, and in that church were his three ex-wives, and he's sitting there in a church, an honored member of the community, with his new family. Uh, Anybody think there's something wrong with that scenario? Let's see what Jesus said about marriage. Well, let's see. Matthew, Gospel of Matthew. I'm not sure even what version of the Bible I'm reading right now. Probably, I pulled it up online, so I'm going to say probably New International Version. Grab your Dewey Reams, grab your King James, grab your New Revised Version, grab whatever you like. Check it out. Jesus said, it has been said, anyone who divorces his wife must give her a certificate of divorce. But I tell you that anyone who divorces his wife, except for sexual immorality, makes her the victim of adultery. And anyone who marries a divorced woman commits adultery. Mark 10. Pharisees ask him, is it lawful for a man to divorce his wife? He says, what did Moses command you? They said about the certificate. He says that was because of the hardness of your heart. He says, in the beginning, God made them and made them male and female. That ring a bell? Anybody? But he says, therefore, what God has joined together, let no one separate. And then his disciples asked him about it. He said plainly, anyone who divorces his wife and marries another woman commits adultery against her. And if she divorces her husband and marries another man, she commits adultery. Gospel of Luke. Anyone who divorces his wife and marries another woman commits adultery, and the man who marries of a divorced woman commits adultery. I can go on. I can really go on. There is no point at any time in the Bible where Jesus says it's okay to get divorced. He stipulates there are times when that bad option is going to have to be taken. But if you want to turn this thing around, if you want to never have another school shooting, if you want to give your kids a better life than we've had in this turmoil and chaos, if you want to be willing to make the sacrifices that Mr. Vernon Hazlitt and the men of the greatest generation made, I mean, he was ready to run into machine gun fire. He did. His best friend was cut in half by machine gun fire. He then came home and became a businessman and had a family and committed himself to that, if at all possible, stay married. It's kind of the key to a happy life. It's the key to prosperity. And even if all morality was set aside, you get divorced, you're going to lose half your money. You want to know why your grandparents had an estate to leave people, a home and property and money in the bank? They stayed married. The baby boomers, there's nothing to leave their kids. They burn it all up. The generations that have come after the baby boomers, worse. Now, I'm saying this as an unmarried man. Everyone's going to point that out. You don't know how hard it could be. No, I don't. Honestly, because I've been looking for the right woman. I didn't want, due to a child, what was done to me by my father. Now, what does all this have to do with herbalism? Well, it's got a lot to do with herbalism. First of all, our entire society is degrading and falling apart in front of our eyes. Whether you want to take charge of your medical health, your body sovereignty, as some people say, or you would much rather just keep going along and going to doctors and doing what you're told, you may not have a choice pretty soon. The system is collapsing. I won't name the drug company, but one of our major drug companies, one of the biggest producers of the COVID vaccine, people are saying they may go bankrupt. It seems they didn't have the proper patent for what they produced, and their vaccine is quite literally killing people. And certain countries are perhaps about to sue them. They won't buy their products anymore. The head of their company recently complained about having to destroy millions of doses of the vaccine because countries would not accept it anymore. Now, I will not mourn their demise at all, but that means that's one drug company that's not going to be putting drugs on your shelf. If China goes to war with Taiwan, or if they do anything that disrupts trade between the two of us, China makes most of our drugs. It makes most of our pharmaceuticals. Just about everything you buy is made in China. That entire supply chain collapse in minutes. You may have to learn home remedies. I think you really ought to learn home remedies. As I said, faith in these systems is collapsing because the systems are falling apart and incompetent. In the state of North Carolina, where I live, more than half of all children graduate functionally illiterate, and fewer than a third can do basic math. Now, what was the most important word I just said? Graduate. They leave school with a degree, a high school diploma, saying that they've been taught what they were supposed to be taught. And yet they're illiterate and cannot do basic math. They don't know anything else either. Trust me, I've spoken with a lot of them. But more than half, they then go into college where there are remedial programs. And honestly, the bar has been lowered to the point where you will learn in college now what your parents probably learned in high school if you're lucky. You're going to get what you pay for. I'm telling you, there's a college right up the road from me where, tuition's 50 or 70,000 a year, and you could probably be brain dead and come out with a degree as long as you have a wallet or can take out enough student debt to cover it. Everybody knows it. It's a joke. There's a rhyme that goes with the name of the school that I won't mention, but even graduates of the school know it's a complete and total joke. Okay? And it's a private college. It's so, I mean, even, the private colleges are sometimes worse than the public ones. That person will then take their diploma in gender studies or something equally as ridiculous, and they will go get a job somewhere. And next thing you know, they're calling the shots. Your banker, your doctor, your nurse, your police officer, your real estate agent, you name it. The kid behind the cash register at the grocery store, the manager of the grocery store, people who actually can tell you what to do, people who actually have authority over your life, not just people in the service industry. Our system's so broken that you may go to a doctor and you may have someone with a license and degrees, and they may kill you. I'm not saying it's common. I'm not casting aspersions. Your county DA may be taking bribes or have a personal reason to either prosecute you unfairly or let you off the hook. Uh, like I said, those police officers were working for the Mexican cartels. You have got to take charge of your health. I'm going to say this again. God made man. Now, sickness and death entered into the world through the fall of Adam. Okay, that's classic Christian catechesis. That's pure doctrine right there. Every single person who is a Christian should understand this. Before the fall of man, before even the apple, there was no sickness, there was no death. Sickness entered the world through sin. It was a disruption of the patterns that were set in place. A more modern way of looking at it. But every single herb is made to cure the ills of man. You can learn them, you can find them, you can listen to my show, you can read about them, you can get old pharmacy manuals, which before 1950, I want to say between 1930 to 1950, almost every single drug in that pharmacy catalog was plant-based. You can absolutely take charge of your health. I wish I had a better outlook on the future. I think if certain current politicians are replaced with better politicians, maybe we'll have a chance. Um, who knows what can happen? I always have hope. But I think If you haven't begun to think about it before, now is the time to learn to grow some of your own food, to store what you can't grow, learn to cook for yourself. Because again, I mean, even just a little war with China, even if China goes to war with another country, which is Taiwan, it's going to wipe out half the food on the shelves. I mean, we get a lot from China. Trust me. Go into a store and just look and see what's made in China and what isn't. Disruptions again in the grain. I mean, Ukraine is such a great producer of grain. Russia produces most of our fertilizer. Look at everything on the shelf and see what has corn products in it, from cornmeal to corn syrup. These seemingly unrelated events, no conspiracy theory, can absolutely disrupt everything. And meanwhile, we can no longer rely on the institutions that have seen America through to this point. Honestly, if you saw those parents begging those police to go in and stop that shooter, if you ever think sending your child to a public school again, and if you ever think you can rely on somebody else to protect you or to feed you or to care for your whatever the need may be, from medical down to auto mechanic. Honestly, it wasn't long ago. Let me just give you two little examples. I had to have my car inspected, right? And so I go in and I went to a place I wasn't familiar with. And the guy says, no, I won't pass inspection. Um, he said, your tire's a little worn. I went out and measured the tread. I said, no, they'll pass. And he says, no, I've already written it down. Your tires are worn. And look, those brakes are shot. Now, the brakes were okay. I mean, I had recently changed the brake pads. He said, I cannot let your vehicle leave here legally. It's a danger. It's a hazard. I said, give me my car. He said, if you drive away from here in that vehicle, I'm going to call the police to immediately have you arrested. He then wanted to hand me a $1,200 bill for a brake job. Okay, that's pure outright utter corruption. It's become far too common these days. I could give you some more stories along those lines. Another time I go in and have a little work done, and the guy has just gotten the bill wrong. He added it up wrong. He was charging me over $100 more than what he should have charged me. And I said, look, your math is wrong. Add these numbers together. And I went through it 3 times. The man still could not get the bill to come out right. His wife had to come over. He was actually, not trying to rip me off. He was just that poorly educated. You got to learn to do for yourself. And the very best thing you can do today, learn to plant some seeds, learn to go fishing. I cannot believe, I mean, I grew up fishing. Kids don't have dads these days. They don't learn to fish. I mean, I was just the other day telling someone literally how to use a cane pole. Totally not their fault. They were never taken fishing. And once the fish caught, no idea how to gut it, clean it, learn to hunt. If things really got bad, yeah, there'd be a lot of hunters out in the woods going after deer and other big game. You know what they're not going to be going after is a lot of small game. I mean, yeah, there'll be a lot of squirrel hunters, don't get me wrong. Learn to trap. Get some ethical traps, and there are such things. There are instant kill traps, or there are traps that will hold the animal without harming it. Learn to trap small game. Learn to use a rabbit box. If you're going to have a garden, rabbits are coming in there, you can trap those rabbits, and that's meat on the table. Learn to cook. As I said before, learn a little bit about herbal medicine so that when you get sick, you don't have to go to a doctor, rely on someone's expertise that may not have it, or go to a pharmacy and look for medications with over-counter prescriptions that may not be there in a bad case scenario. Learn to do first aid. I mean, the worst thing, the worst, I mean, next to, you know, those parents having to sit out there where their children are being slaughtered and the police are handcuffing them. The police were literally tasing and handcuffing parents who were complaining about the police not doing their job. One of the next worst things, which is nowhere near as bad, honestly, is going to an emergency room. I told you recently about someone I was talking to, their son had come in for a visit from another state. He woke up and half his face was paralyzed. He went to a major medical center, one of the most prestigious in the country that happens to be based in North Carolina, and they were really only seeing COVID patients. He went in and he filled out the form. He sat there for 16 hours before he could see a doctor. 16 hours. The last time I went to an emergency room, it was, I mean, years ago. I was in my late teens, and a glass shelf fell on me at work, split my arm open from the elbow to the wrist. I mean, it was cut. I mean, you could look in and see the tendons and everything. And I went to it and I sat there holding my own arm together so I didn't bleed to death for several hours, literally. And when the doctor finally saw me, I think he was high on something because he was laughing the whole time. He stitches me up and somehow ended up knotting the stitches under the skin, and they weren't the kind that dissolved. So when I came back to have my stitches taken out, he pulls a stitch and ripped the entire wound open again. You got to figure out how to take care of yourself. And of course, what's the other big bombshell of May of 2022? The baby formula shortage. Yeah. Unfortunately, look, most mothers don't breastfeed anymore. They're the only person earning an income in that family, and they've got to go to work. Okay. And some can't. I'm not blaming the mothers, obviously. Some can't. There are dietary needs that the children have. There are health issues with the mother. Things have changed. I mean, if you're a pregnant woman and you were giving them antibiotics when you're pregnant, your kid's coming out with a wrecked immune system and may not be able to drink milk. I'm sorry. That's just the honest to goodness answer. You have healthy gut bacteria in a child. When they come out of the womb, they get most of it from the mother. You get all of it from the mother, actually, until they come into contact with air. That gut bacteria is necessary to break down lactose and et cetera. And so you have mothers that were on medication before or during pregnancy who will have children that have to have special formulas, and you've got an incompetent government that just doesn't care, and they would have aborted them before they were born if they had their druthers, as we say, if they had what they would rather in the first place. They don't care. You cannot rely on the government. You cannot rely on anyone but yourself. And it's time, if the time has come, to take action, to go get a book. Buy one of mine. Buy one of my books. Hey, I just finished my seventh book, by the way. That's going to be a big announcement for next week. But I'm not going to announce it on Memorial Day weekend. That would be in a bit of poor taste, I think, to say the least. But buy a book about herbal medicine. Buy a book about gardening. Take a class. If there's an organic gardening class, if there's just a simple introduction to gardening class, take it. If not, find a master gardener in your community, your county extension service, call them up, ask them what resources there are for you to learn about gardening, learn to preserve foods, learn about beekeeping, learn about anything you can. Get the hell out of debt. Okay? Debt is the killer. Debt is slavery. Debt is what binds your hands and keeps you from doing and being resilient. Today, take action because it's all falling apart. And I don't say that to be sensational. Our system is built on confidence in the system. That's what it's built on. It's built on the presumption of goodwill. And think about what institution is left in America that you still believe in. Do you trust and believe everything your church teaches? Do you think they're, honestly looking out for your soul? Do you believe in your doctors? Do you believe they can always give you good advice, or are they, enriching the pharmaceutical companies and the corporations they work for? Do you think your teachers are teaching your kids the best stuff? And I can go down the line. I mean, from one end to the other. Do you trust your banks? Do you trust your employer? Do you trust your employees? I mean, in this day and age, I would never hire anybody to work for me. One, I don't want to provide 27 bathrooms for 37 genders or whatever it is. Two, anybody can sue you for anything these days. I mean, it's not just a slip and fall, but they can say, you said something offensive to them sexually, or you made a pass at them. You cannot trust anyone these days. That is the point where we are. where you can no longer trust the fabric of society to remain intact. Starting today, I would like to respectfully request that you honor the legacy of those men who fought and died for you and begin to be the free, responsible, resilient American that they hoped you would be. Remember, at the end of the day, the most important thing you have on earth is your family. Don't take them for granted. Don't hurt them. Don't be unfaithful. Care for your family first and foremost with everything you've got. Because at the end of the day, on this earth, they are all you have. You will care for them, they will care for you if you do right by them. And you can start doing that today by learning to take care of the little cuts and scrapes and colds and all the minor things that we deal with in kitchen medicine and home remedies. That's my opinion. I know I have been remarkably politically incorrect. Probably really upset a lot of people in this episode. But you know that I believe this. This is my sincere and honest belief. This is why I do what I do. Y'all, let's pray for a better June than we had in May. In all honesty, May was a bad month. Let's pray for a better one and let's make the effort to make it happen. All right, y'all. Have a good one. I'll talk to you next. The information in this podcast is not intended to diagnose or treat any disease or condition. Nothing I say or write has been evaluated or approved by the FDA. I'm not a doctor. The U.S. government does not recognize the practice of herbal medicine, and there is no governing body regulating herbalists. Therefore, I'm really just a guy who studies herbs. I'm not offering any advice. I won't even claim that anything I write or say is accurate or true. I can tell you what herbs have been traditionally used for. I can tell you my own experience and if I believe an herb has helped me. I cannot nor would I tell you to do the same. If you use an herb anyone recommends, you are treating yourself. You take full responsibility for your health. Humans are individuals and no two are identical. What works for me may not work for you. You may have an allergy, a sensitivity, an underlying condition that no one else even shares and you don't even know about. Be careful with your health. By continuing to listen to my podcast or read my blog, you agree to be responsible for yourself, for your own research, make your own choices, and not to blame me for anything ever.